In a rubbered up style. Good morning. Yeah, so I was listening to Bob Marley, Bad Cat, in a rubbered up style. Good morning, everybody. It's a brand new week, and I think today is looking like a good day. I don't see the usual glitches I've been seeing for a couple of weeks running now. Now, can you guys hear me? Let me know in the comment section. It's always good to know. All right, Kunle Aziz, I see you there. And I'm assuming you can hear me. Good morning, everyone, once again. Shola, old friend from Fiditi. All right, good one. Why Slim, just let me know that I can be heard. Morning, everybody. It's a beautiful morning out there. I see the sun. I know things been tough in this Bulaba time, but I trust we'll survive Bulaba just like we survived Buhari as well. It is well with you all. Beautiful morning, everyone. So whilst we're waiting for others to join us, I have received a question, only one question this week. Not really a question, it's more of a comment, but it's deserving of clear answer. A gentleman called Abime Bude, he said, why is it that an insightful observer and social commentator, much like yourself, hesitate to join a political party despite advocating for significant changes? Then he went on to give his comment. Says he assumes that this reluctance stems from a concern that the political system may compromise my values and dilute the message. Many in your position fear losing your independence and the ability to critique freely, becoming entangled in the key issues that you aim to address. Let me deal with that quickly. I am a member of Afenifere. Now, I know that a lot of you have this mistaken belief that Afenifere is a social-cultural group. Nothing can be further from the truth. Afenifere is the Yoruba name for the political party that started its life as the Action Group. The Yoruba name for the Action Group is Afenifere. The Action Group batted the UPN. His Yoruba name was Afenifere. It also batted the Alliance for Democracy. His Yoruba name was Afenifere. The one thing that is consistent about the parties that were battered and the AG in his original iteration is that it was always a center-left political party found on the ideology of socialism. Now let's be clear about something. In the immediate aftermath of the end of the First Republic, in the years of the military, the Action Group continued to meet in the guise of a socio-cultural group. It was easy for Afenifere because that was the name by which it governed in the part of Nigeria where it held sway. So Afenifere is one and the same as the Action Group, one and the same as the UPN, one and the same as the Alliance for Democracy. I was not old enough. I wasn't even born in the years of the Action Group, but I grew up to meet his influence. And his seeds and the fruit of the seed it planted, the free education and all of that were enjoyed by all and sundry in the Western region. I grew up in the years of the UPN, but I wasn't old enough to vote. But by the time the Alliance for Democracy came, I was part and parcel of its formation. I was right there at Eagle Square. So let's be clear. It is not like I am not a member of a political party. I am a member of Afenifere. Currently, Afenifere does not have a political platform, but it cooperated and collaborated with the Labour Party in working for the emergence of Peter Obi and for his candidacy. Today, Afenifere does not have a political platform from where it engages with the Nigerian people. And that is why I have been careful to make clear that I am not a member of the Labour Party. There was a coincidence of interest, and we worked with the Labour Party at that point. As of today, I do not belong to a political party, but I belong to Afenifere. And when Afenifere has finally come to decide what political party to join, not necessarily on the basis of political expediency, but on the basis of ideological affinity, I will be happy to let you know where I'm at. So it's not for a fear of political contamination alone, although that exists, but because the political party to which I belong, the political group to which I am aligned, the Afenifere, does not have a political party registered today, and I am careful not to miscommunicate my position. That is why it would appear to a lot of you as if I am not a member of a political party. I am a member of a political group. It is known as Afenifere in the southwestern part of Nigeria. But it is a national party because in the First Republic, it was the opposition party in the Eastern Regional Assembly, and it was equally the opposition party in the Northern Regional Assembly. So, Afenifere is the Yoruba name of a political party, not a socio-cultural group. The ones who want to be socio-cultural are the ones you find gathering in Akure, sponsored by Dakuda. He has tried at various times since 2003 to destroy Afenifere when he destroyed the Alliance for Democracy. When the time comes, the issues will become clearer to all of us. So that's as far as that question is concerned. I'm not afraid to have my ideas tested in the political space. But the political party where that would be done has not been duly sorted out. When it is sorted out, we'll contest ideas in the public space. That's as far as that is concerned. So this morning, okay, it's always just a couple of minutes to 10, so you tolerate me whilst we wait for 10 o'clock so that we can go into the main issue today. But in the interim, those of you who cook, please boycott Erisco until such a time as when his CEO, that short man that does not appear to have a clear understanding of the fact that people have the right to critique products without having to worry their heads about arrest by jobless police that should be engaged in looking for kidnappers who are picking children out of schools like you pick cherries. Until such a time as when that company gets its act together and learn to respect the rights of individuals, when it stops suborning evil, having the police chase around pregnant women to be locked up just because of the bruised ego of that short man devil, until such a time, please boycott their products. That is as far as Erisco is concerned. The apple really falls too far from the tree, and Dauda, or whatever his name is, the son of the short El Rufai, who came on here to spout a whole heap of nonsense in the past week on Sheon Okinbaloye's radio show. Look at him with some pity, but understand very clearly that you need to be asking him, where is Daddy Yatta? Where is Daddy Yatta? Nigerians must not be afraid of speaking the truth to power. A man dies only once. If you've killed Daddy Yatta, don't die yourselves. Yeah? But we will not forget. Now, it is 10 o'clock. Those of you who are just joining us, you missed a little bit there. So welcome once again. It's a brand new week. And we're starting today by looking at a Yoruba proverb that I shared with you earlier on. That's the scripture for the day. And what does it say? Àìsàn tó ń ṣẹgbẹ̀fà, òun ló ń ṣọ̀ọ́dúnrún. Àìsàn tó ń ṣàbọ̀yàdé, gbogbo ọlọ́yà ló ń ṣe. What does this mean? It speaks to the fact that what afflicts one afflicts all. My topic for today is the Feudal Republic of Nigeria. And I have picked that scripture very carefully because once upon a time when you speak of feudalism, it was almost always that you were speaking very clearly to something that you believe affects only the Fulanis and northern Nigeria. But unfortunately for us, the virus has jumped host, and it should be of interest to all Nigerians. Feudalism is no longer a construct that you find solely within the northern establishment, and it is no longer the affliction of Hausas and the Fulani peasantry or all the other persons who have been unfortunate enough over the course of history to be afflicted by it in northern Nigeria. Today, feudalism has become a Nigerian affliction because we are now living in the Feudal Republic of Nigeria. So let's deal with these issues. What is feudalism? Feudalism is essentially a governance, a social political construct that creates societies where there are overlords and then there are the serfs. What it simply means is that there is no equality within the society. Some people were born to rule. Remember that slogan. And some people are born to serve. And those who are born to rule are necessarily above the law. And those who are born to serve are meant to remain underfoot. In between the two extreme classes, you find those who are born to serve those who are born to rule. And by virtue of their proximity to power, they also acquire levels of impunity that are generally open and available to those born to rule. So if you are serving the master, you exercise the powers of the master, and sometimes you exercise these powers on your own behalf. So look at the average Nigerian policeman. The only reason he can turn to the citizen and tell the citizen, quote and unquote, I can shoot you and nothing will happen, is because he shoots people on behalf of his oga and nothing happens. So he knows that since he's going to use the same power and he has used the same powers on behalf of his masters, he could use the same powers in his own respect and on his own behalf without necessarily having to clear it with the master, because this is the power that he had been given over those he pretends to serve. Feudalism, in short, exists in places where the law does not rule and where there are no citizens. And that is the country, Nigeria. The law does not rule here. And regardless of how many times you call yourself citizens, you are not citizens. Let us trace the history of feudalism so that we might all have a clearer understanding of this. Long before the white men came to these shores, long before Mungo Park told us he discovered the Niger, way before there was a Nigeria, there was in northern Nigeria, or there were, I should say, two feudal states. These feudal states were the Kanem-Borno Empire, and there was also the Sokoto Caliphate. I will spare you the detail of their emergence, but suffice to say that long before the Sokoto Caliphate, there was the Kanem-Borno Empire. The Kanem-Borno Empire was essentially one that ran on the principle of feudalism, but in its classic form and in its expansionist manner, you didn't see feudalism emerge until the jihad of Uthman Danfodio and the establishment of the Sokoto Caliphate. The Sokoto Caliphate existed on the one single principle feudalism. But it wasn't just feudalism as existed in Rumfa, with Rumfa before you had Usman Dan Fodio leading his jihad. What came with the jihad was a theocratic feudal state where people ran roughshod across vast parts of northern Nigeria in the name of Islam. But even as they preached Islam, even as they used Islam as the template and basis for legitimacy, there was a feudal state being established. In that feudal state, slave trade was the major item of trade. There exist records, even within the Emirates. The SLS, Sanusi, Lamido Sanusi, even told us when he was still the emir before he was deposed, that they have records in Kano Emirates dating back hundreds of years that kept record of their trade with the Arab world. When you hear of the transatlantic slave trade, what is almost always forgotten is that long before there was a transatlantic slave trade, there was a trans-Saharan slave trade. That trans-Saharan slave trade was largely fed by the feudal states that had emerged in northern Nigeria. It wasn't by accident that by the time the British came, they found a thriving empire, the Uthman Dan Fodio one, that you will call the Sokoto Caliphate. That Sokoto Caliphate could have overran most of northern Nigeria, but it deliberately avoided doing so because once you conquer a space in an Islamic republic and in an Islamic state, you could no longer trade fellow Muslims because they will now have to convert to Islam once you conquer the territory. You could no longer trade them as slaves. Not being able to trade them as slaves meant that they were left unconquered, but what simply happened was that the Fulanis built garrisons across those territories. So you had garrisons in places like Nasarawa, Lafia, Suleja, in places like Bida. There were places where they built garrisons, but those garrisons were meant to make sure that the local population were kept in check. They were never truly taken as territories to be ruled directly, so they kept them almost as slave stock. But this is to help you understand and have clearer understanding of the historical basis of feudalism. Feudalism does not exist in the understanding that people should ever be equal. It was always so that those who rule are above the law, above reason, and rule at pleasure. Now, when the British came, the British simply built on what they found and they called it indirect rule. So, even in places where the Fulani had not conquered the people, either deliberately or because they couldn't, in places like Suleja, in places like Abuja, for instance, the Gwari could not truly be conquered because of the rocky terrain of their neighborhood. They couldn't conquer those places. They simply raided them for slaves pre-colonial days. But by the time the colonial masters came, they extended the authorities of these Fulani emirs over those neighborhoods because it was convenient to simply rule using the existing system. They frowned against the Christianization of what were largely pagans, quote and unquote, because once they became Christians, they became more difficult for Fulanis to rule. So what you found was that the British came, built on top of what was in existence, legitimized what they found on the ground, and then in places like Eastern Nigeria, in the land of the Igbos, I think Igbos will say Igbos do not make kings. So what they simply did was to create warrant chiefs in Igbo land. In Yoruba land, where we had kings, our kings were not absolute rulers. There were checks and balances within our system that ensured that the commoners were not subject to the absolute powers of any king. So in Yoruba land, what they simply did was to strengthen the kings, but they could not get the same level of absolute powers vested in our kings, unlike what was already in existence, where they had feudal empires before their coming. So you have a situation now where all over Nigeria, in order to make sure that the British could rule without bringing the necessary manpower, they adopted their indirect rule. But the indirect rule that was adopted strengthened the existing feudal order. Now, this was the foundation of the feudalization of the place today called Nigeria. When the military, when the British left, or even before they left, of course, there were a lot of talks about citizenship, especially in southern Nigeria, and this was why the North refused to join the call for independence before 1960. You would have heard of an hour moving the motion years before it was. The North opposed it because they were afraid of the Western ideas of citizenship that were being preached in southern Nigeria. The British assured them that they needn't worry and they would be given a veto, which was why, go check your history. At every point when the Legislative Council was formed in Nigeria, the British were always careful to ensure that whilst the Western region would have 18 members, the Eastern region would have 18 members, the North was given 36. So it was always the number of seats allocated to the North was always the same as the combination of the seats given to the East and the West. That was the veto that was given from day one, and that veto continues until today. That is why you find that the combination of states in southern Nigeria almost always equals the number of states credited to northern Nigeria. This is the colonial construct. Nigeria was constructed as a feudal state from day one. But here is the thing. In Western Nigeria, Chief Obafemi Awolowo and the Action Group recognized the threat, and what they did was to weaponize education. Schools were built rapidly across the length and breadth of Western Nigeria. Mass communication, that's how come Western Nigeria was quick to build a television station. Knowledge was weaponized as an antidote to feudalism in Western Nigeria. The East was not too far behind, but for Awolowo with his socialist leaning, it was critical that the people be aware and recognize their rights as citizens so that they are not susceptible to enslavement under the feudal order that the British had constructed. Now, you will come to understand very quickly that by the time we were getting into Nigeria, the first constitution, I believe it was the Richard Constitution of 1946 or thereabout, Obafemi Awolowo kicked against the unitary system that the British was trying to foist on Nigeria, and this led to a lot of constitutional crises. These crises were eventually resolved, and by the time you had the 1954 Constitution, that was the truly federal constitution that now truly broke everything into regions, federating regions, and each region was allowed to run at its own pace. This was kept, improved upon as time went on, and this became the 1960 Constitution. It was a federal constitution, but it was always a battle between the forces of federalism. Eventually, the arrangement of 1960 was perfected in the 1963 Republican Constitution. That Republican Constitution of 1963 showed what was intended for Nigeria. By the time the Midwest region was to be created, there was a plebiscite in the region. There was an economic survey. The viability of the region was established. The people for whom the region was being created voted and accepted that they wanted the region. This was equally taken before the Western Regional Assembly, out of which the Midwest was coming. It passed. The motion was taken before the Federal House of Representatives in Lagos. This was equally passed. So you saw clear right to self-determination being exercised by the people. The hallmark of the country that was founded in 1960 was the right to self-determination. That is something that you find with citizens. Only citizens have the right to self-determination. So because we were citizens back then, our right to decide what we wanted was given free fetters. It was allowed to flower. So Nigerians in what was the Midwest voted for the Midwest. Nigerians in what was the Western region voted to sanction it. And the Western region was created. By 1963, 4 regions were clearly sanctioned by Nigerians. There were also plans to create more, one out of each of the other 2, which would have made 6 regions in all. But by 1966, the problems and inherent contradictions of the states that was created, the refusal of parties to play by the rule, the loss of the Middle Belt to the imperators of the North. Once they lost the Middle Belt because of the TV rebellions, an alliance had to be found with Akintola in the West. It was that led eventually to the first coup, and then the second coup by July. And of course, you know the story of our civil war, which was anything but civil. By the end of the Civil War, they parroted the story. No victor, no vanquished. Nothing could be further from the truth. The only tragedy is that in failing to understand the commonalities of the affliction, in failing to recognize that when you gain temporary victories, you lose long term. The likes of Obasanjo, Yoruba generals, Middle Belt soldiers did not understand just exactly how much lies they were being told when they were shouting one Nigeria. Those who were restructuring Nigeria into what they needed Nigeria to be, what they want Nigeria to be, the feudal state it was created to be, were busy planning long term. Some of the most repressive and feudalistic legislations and policies were passed through during the Obasanjo regime. Not just, it wasn't Gowon alone. Gowon did his own part, believing that there was one Nigeria, one North. The illusion of one North meant that they forgot everything that led to the TV riots, the Jos riot, all the riots that took place in reaction to Fulani hegemony in northern Nigeria before independence and after independence that led to the military action that were taken, sending soldiers into Benue, Boko, and the TV areas around 1962 was quickly forgotten. A common enemy was found for the Nigerian, the Igbos. What people forgot is that every evil that was visited upon the Igbo man merely became a place to prove it and before it was then eventually transferred all over Nigeria. Every Nigerian evil for which we complain today was essentially a way to deal with the persons that had been conquered in the war. Quota system, educationally disadvantaged states, inequitable distribution of offices and positions in Nigeria. First, it was the Igbo man that suffered the brunt. Today, every Nigerian, including the Fulani, suffers it. Because what has happened is that feudalism has jumped host. It is now a Nigerian thing. What has happened is that today, the law no longer rules in the place called Nigeria, and it cannot for as long as we continue on our current trajectory. What has happened today is that because it was okay to do it back then, it was okay and it has become normalized. Evil has overtaken the land today, and Nigeria has become a place where citizenship has been lost. Some men can practically kill and get away with it. You're hearing stories of how Buhari's ministers are refunding money under the table. Who is hearing about it? They are above the law, so they cannot be publicly held to account. They have to always settle the matter quietly because it's a class thing. It's no longer a tribal thing. See that construct, the feudal construct, it has jumped host. Your governors are emirs. Whether you are in Benue, whether you are in Lagos, whether you are in Calabar, wherever you are, your governors are emirs. And the Jaguda that is sat in Azo Rock, whichever one it is at any point in time, that is your sultan. That is the situation the Nigeria is in today. So what started as a Fulani problem is today a Nigerian problem. The current Nigeria is a feudal republic. Let me tell you about the characteristics of feudalism. One of the first things that you'll find in every feudal state is that the state weaponizes poverty against the people. You'll find that it is acceptable and desirable that the people must be focused on existing, not on living. Because if they begin to live, they begin to demand answers. A man with a full belly will ask questions of his oppressor. But the man that is preoccupied with finding something to eat because, like Yorubas will say, before the fast, people are already hungry before the fasting begins. So, people have been fasting long before the fast. When you are fasting long before the fast, chances are that you are not going to waste your time asking questions of the people who should be ruling over you, who should lead you. The only thing is you are focused on your existence. That is what has happened to the Nigerian. The state has weaponized poverty against the people. But if it were only poverty that has been weaponized, it would have not been as tragic as our situation is right now. Ignorance has equally been weaponized. It is instructive that the people who abuses me and others seeking to liberate them the most are the poor. Those who are actually victims of the system are the ones constantly abusing, even killing those who are their would-be liberators. Constantly. Things they will not send their children to do, they will send the poor whom you are trying to rescue from poverty to do to you. You will not find the children of the powerful working as hired killers. They don't send their children out on the street during what they pretend to be elections. It is the children of the poor, victims of the system, that they are always going to send out. And let me assure you, the West is complicit. The East is complicit. When I say the West, I'm talking about Britain, I'm talking about America, I'm talking about the Western world. The French are particularly interested in us right now. And the Chinese are not far behind, because it is in our putrefaction that they assure the wealth of their own countries. Yorubas will say, who will not take advantage of the stupid? We have crude, but we import petrol. How does that make sense? Look at the entirety of what is lost in the value chain simply because of the stupidity. We call it stupidity, but it's not stupidity. It's deliberate wickedness. Sometimes it is easy to forget that these things are deliberate. We say that our rulers are stupid. They are not stupid. These are deliberate policy choices. It is not rocket science if they want to build an electric grid. It's not rocket science. Obasanjo spent $16 billion producing darkness. Today, people are busy clapping for him because they've forgotten the evil he has done. We have such short memory, but I will not be derailed from my subject. Those are two characteristics. You know what they thought is? They captured the religious class. The religious clerics are part and parcel of the evil. Let me explain something to you. Religion comes from the Greek word, religio. It has a French, old French equivalent, religare. Both means the same thing. It means to bind. But what is religion binding? Religion is meant to bind your mind, bind your imagination, bind your capacity to think independently. So you find that in Nigeria, the religious class is part and parcel of the reigning class. What they do is to tell you to pray for your oppressors. They preach peace to the oppressed, to the enslaved. They tell you to fast and pray. But when they are building their churches and their mosques, they don't fast and pray, they walk. In relation to their own personal welfare, they don't fast and pray, they walk. But they tell you, pray, fast. The other day I watched one endlessly say, oh, do I? Are we the only ones who sing? They tell you about generational curses. If the white man who traded my type as slaves, who had collars around their necks and would shoot us for fun, if the king of Belgium and his children are not busy praying against ancestral curses because the bastard was busy cutting our hands because people were not producing, he's not fighting ancestral causes. It's me, jejely sitting down in my Africa, whose ancestors were assailed. I'm the one who should be fighting and praying against ancestral causes. Of what use is the blood of Jesus if I'm still praying against ancestral causes? They know the truth, but the truth has not set them free because your pastors and your imams are now with Orojide Sanwo-Olu in Lagos. Even our traditional religion has been subverted and repurposed for political usage. So watch out for those three things: weaponization of poverty, weaponization of ignorance, weaponization of religion. They are all intended to produce one thing: the stupefaction of the people. The more stupid the people are, the easier it is to control them. And that is where we are. And that is what we have become as a people. Nigeria is today a feudal state. That is what we have become. Pound equals 2,000 plus naira. That's not by accident. It's by design. Those who rule Nigeria have done so deliberately because it is in our impoverishment that their powers are assured. It is in our ignorance that their powers are assured. It is in our being stupidly religious without being godly. That is where their powers are assured. That is the country that we have built. Welcome to the feudal republic of Nigeria, or as my friends will say, Nigeria. Now, how can you have the law ruling in a place where some people must be above the law? How can you have citizenship in a place where the law does not rule? Nigeria is the classic lie. They tell you you are citizens. They tell you you are in a democracy. But this is anything but that. The only antidote, singular antidote to feudalism is citizenship. One of the primary rights of a citizen is the right to free speech. That is why those who speak truth are considered dangerous by the Nigerian state. I've seen pictures and videos online of my brother Omoyele Sowore finally rejoining his family after 5 years of being away from them. I'm happy for him. 5 years. What did he do? He spoke. He spoke as a citizen. He presumes to be a citizen in a country where citizenship does not exist. That was all Yele ever did. Mazi Nnamdi Kanu is in prison today, not necessarily because he disagreed with this system, but because he threatens this system, mostly with the things he says. The system must show those who presume to do that it has no space for them. That is the only reason he remains in prison. Nigeria is a lie. And that lie has to end. The Nigerian must become citizens if that lie must end. Let me say this to you today and then I'll get out of your face. If you are truly desirous of ending this, refuse to buy into their fears because they are always trying to scare you into silence. A lone voice is useless. It only becomes effective when there is a chorus. You all need to pick up the chorus. You all need to speak your truth in your space because that is the only way you are going to ever dent this system. Don't look to the courts. The courts are lost. They will do as they are told until such a time as when the courts learn to fear the reactions or responses of citizens, until enough men and women of goodwill are sat on the bench who are willing to remember that however long we live here, we're going somewhere and we would all render an account. This would not end. My sole purpose this morning is to let you know that you all need to wake up. Recognize what you're dealing with. This is not a democracy. You are not citizens. The law does not rule here. And the only way you can end this is by insisting on all the rights you have been given in that lying constitution. It says you have the right to free speech. Use it. Àìlè sọ̀rọ̀ ní bẹ̀rẹ̀ orí burúkú, an inability to speak is the beginning of every evil that will assail you. Open your mouth. Speak. Don't kill a man twice. I think it was, I know it's Patrick Wilmot. He said something I have always found very encouraging in my journey. He says, and I quote, "If I hold up a mirror for you to behold you, and you do not like the reflection in the mirror, breaking the mirror will not change anything. Cutting off my hand will change nothing either. The truth is the truth. Speak your truth. It is the only weapon that can slay the Nigerian monster." I've come by this week to let you know that you live in the lying Republic of Nigeria and is a feudal state. To get out of that feudal state, you are going to have to assert your rights as a citizen. At least they say you are. See you next Sunday and have you a blessed week. God bless you all. And yes, remember, boycott Erisco until he stops oppressing that young woman. A citizen has the right of choice, and she exercised her right of choice in writing a review. The useless police we have, useless, went after her on the basis of the bruised ego of one short monkey like that. You, fellow victims of the Nigerian state, support her by boycotting that product. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your week. God bless you all.